I'm sorry. Andy, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. I now call the Snoqualmie City Council meeting to order. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Ross, can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can you please take the roll call?
Councilmember Jeans.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Here.
Councilmember Lassay.
Here.
Councilmember Sundwall.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Here.
Mayor Larson.
I am here. Council, may I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. Is there any discussion?
I'd like
Councilmember
to
Sundwall.
make an adjustment, if that's okay, or amendment, whatever we call it. I would propose that we move the events coordinator position description up to the top of the list. I think we have some people here that would like to discuss that. So rather than wait till 10 o'clock, maybe we can move that up. Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine with me. If it's for this one, I'm just going to kind of look for a nod of heads, or if there's no objection, then we'll go ahead and do that. Are you proposing even before the consent agenda, Councilmember Sundwall?
No. Nope, after consent.
Okay, very good. Any other items for discussion, Council? All right, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. With that, we move on to citizens. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess, you didn't put your change in the form of a motion, did you? I assume that was sort of a consensual thing to.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did?
not.
Okay, so
No,
sorry.
I didn't,
So-
actually. You just looked for a nod and you nodded.
didn't.
Yeah,
There was a motion to amend, there was no objection, it's done.
okay, but do I need to go back to the original motion? Okay.
Okay.
All right, we're still sorting this out. I should note for the public before we move on that the woman to my left is Ann McLaughlin. She's a parliamentarian, and she's been visiting or spending some time with us during the last couple of council meetings to just sort of guide us through and tighten up some of our use of the Robert's rules of procedure so we have a more efficient meeting. So if we seem to stop and pause on occasion and sort of clarify things, we're just trying to improve our processes. So with that, we're going to move on to citizens' comments. There's some 13,000 plus citizens in the city that have the right to have their elected representatives conduct the city's business in an orderly and efficient manner. And because we've often had meetings of late going past 10 o'clock and to keep things efficient, we're going to limit the comments to 2 minutes tonight. So if you wish to speak, I ask that you come forward or wait to be recognized and then come forward. Come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Deliver comments in an efficient and courteous manner. Avoid comments that are unduly repetitious or not relevant to city business, and please address your comments to the council or administration as a whole and do not single out individuals. And again, it's important to also emphasize that the council's here. It's not a time for give and take and debate. It's just to listen to your comments and take them in. So if the council doesn't respond to your comments, please don't feel offended. We do have a nice new improvement tonight where we finally got our new timer in. There's a light box up on the podium there. So if you come up and speak, the light is green when you start your comments. You'll notice a countdown clock there, and at red it goes yellow at 30 seconds, and then at red is when you're expected to stop. And there's an annoying beep that will go off to let you know that as well. So with that, is there anybody from the public after that introduction that would want to come up and say anything at this time? So, Ms. Lowney.
Point of order. Is this regarding things not on the agenda?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Monica Lowney, P.O. Box 493. I just wanted to thank the council and the mayor for getting the time clock. It is something that citizens really appreciate, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lowney. Yes. Yeah. Ms. Money.
Good. Rachel Money, 9305 Brinkley Avenue Southeast, and I'm actually here on behalf of the YMCA of Snoqualmie Board and would like to extend a personal invitation to the council, the mayor, the city staff, and the rest of the public to attend our annual fundraising kickoff next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock at Sigello's. We have a really great fundraising, I think, work ahead of us to provide some really fun programs for the community, including Play Every Day, bringing recess to kids, organized play in schools for over 300 elementary school kids, and expanding our community garden, which last year donated just about 1,000 pounds of produce to the local food bank. So any support is appreciated, and we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to comment this time? Yes, Catherine. Catherine, go ahead.
Catherine Podgewitz, 7951 Maple Avenue, Southeast. I just want to bring to the council and leadership's attention, there's been multiple instances where we have been collecting building materials that have been flying off of the hotel site. We've called the cops, and the cops have come and helped us wrangle some of them, but they were just throwing them back in. So they have unsecured foam board that's like 6 by 8 that when the winds come, fly into the parkway and across in front of our businesses. And it would just seems a little dangerous. So I don't know if you guys want to look into that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, sir.
Kim Maloop, 7618 435th Avenue Southeast, Snoqualmie, way out there in the Riley edition, if you don't recognize that address. I was a participant in the Citizens Academy, but I wasn't able to make the graduation ceremony. And what I was appreciating all along the way was the preparation, the planning, escorting us safely, meeting the police officers, and them giving us a generous amount of time to educate me. And I didn't get a chance to say thank you for all the effort it took to produce that long-running event. So here's my chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Is there anyone else who would like to comment at this time? Okay, see no one else move forward. We'll move on to public hearings, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. And at this time, I'd like to ask the council to please confirm the following appointments I would like to make to the various boards and committees. For the Arts Commission, Gail Morinson, position 5, and Amy Friedman, position 6, for the terms ending January 31st, 2022. For Parks and Events Commission, Kathy Gamble, position 1, Paul Schwimm, position 3, Heather Palmerini, position 6, and Chelsea Robinson, position 7, for terms ending February 28, 2022. For the Civil Service Commission, David Castle, position 5, for a term ending January 31st, 2024. And for the Planning Commission, Rachel Money, position 1, for a term ending December 31st, 2019. Again, these require council confirmation. So if I have a motion, a second.
Moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to confirm as I stated. Is there any discussion, council?
I have a question.
Councilman Mayhew.
Did I get that right, that at least one of those positions was a 6-year term?
That's correct. And, it's a good catch because we had a similar conversation earlier today to say, similar to Planning Commission, those appointment and expiration dates are sort of scattered all around in 6 years. So we're going to bring back an ordinance, if not now, in first part of March when I come back to address that, and do some house cleaning on those positions as well, if that's.
The penalties for early retirement are severe.
Oh, yeah. You were scolded for not seeking recognition, Councilmember Holloway. So. Any other discussion, council? Okay. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment? Or first, I'd like to invite certainly members of the public, but start with some of the candidates if they would like to get up and say anything. I know a couple are here tonight. Rachel, did you want to say anything at this point? Or?
Thank you, and I'm excited for I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
All right. Anybody else? Motion is carried. Congratulations to all those that are reappointed and appointed. Rachel, look forward to working with you. Thank you for stepping up. All right. And with that, I'm moving on to a presentation from the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum, and would like to invite Alyssa Ostergaard to come forward and to give us a little brief presentation on their work. Thank you, Alyssa, for coming tonight.
Members and Mayor, thank you very much for having me today. Do you want me to use
Yes, please. I mean, you could, wherever you're comfortable, but just as long as you use the mic. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, yes, as I said, thanks for having me. I'm going to try to keep this extremely short. This is a 10-minute presentation I'm going to do in 5 minutes. So we are the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum. We're a group that was started in 1998 for the purposes of salmon recovery. A lot of you have probably heard about us before. You've been participating since 1998 as a city. What we do is we coordinate salmon recovery with our partners in Snohomish County, but the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum is only in the King County portion of the watershed. So the Snoqualmie River flows north into the Snohomish River, which drains into Puget Sound through Everett. Skykomish meets up here. Our group is responsible for doing salmon recovery projects and actions in this King County part of the basin. We have a salmon conservation plan that was a citizen and agency effort, started in the 90s, that we decided we wanted to do this on our own instead of having the federal government tell us what we needed to do to recover salmon. And it was finalized based on a lot of science and finalized and approved in 2005, and then it became adopted by the federal agencies as part of the Puget Sound Salmon Recovery Plan. And this is all because Chinook salmon, also known as king salmon, and bull trout were listed as threatened on the Endangered Species Act in 1999. And then steelhead were listed as threatened in 2007. So we have 3 of 9 species of salmonids that are listed under the Endangered Species Act in our basin. We have 2 forums in our basin. There's another one in Snoqualmie County that we participate in on your behalf and behalf of all the partners. They are the lead entity and are responsible for implementing the plan for the whole basin. Since we get some extra funds, we have a little bit more than just salmon recovery that we are able to do. So how we function is King County is the service provider for salmon recovery. You guys pay in along with these other partners, the 2 tribes and 4 other towns and King County. And our current interlocal agreement goes through 2025. We meet twice a year with all these representatives, and the cost shares that you pay into support 2.7 staff people. So I manage that team of people. Currently, you are paying in $6,400 a year for a total budget of $548,000 per year. It's partly offset by a grant from the flood district. Our goal is with our 50-year plan to have 25,000 adult Chinook salmon returning to the basin by 2055. And we're not doing that well. We're actually a little bit lower than this number as of 2015. We're at about 1511. So we still have our work cut out for us, but we have some strategies. We're putting in projects to set back levees, give the river more room to move below the falls where the spawning and rearing is happening. We're protecting forest cover above the falls, restoring stream wetlands and lakes so we have water in the river and it's cold enough for salmon, and improving water quality. It's just a quick map showing all the different projects that we've been implementing over the years. And I'll let you look at that later. The take home is that our group gives out local grant monies to the cities and other groups to do restoration projects. This money is from the flood control district locally, and in turn it helps us get grants from state and federal partners that really boosts our ability to do work. It still is not enough money, so we have more work to do to educate people about that. But the city of Snoqualmie since '98 has had in direct grants and grants to partners almost $600,000 spent in the city on salmon habitat projects. So it's a good investment for your $6,000 a year. And as well, you get to be working in partnership with these other jurisdictions. We offer technical support. We participate in regional planning processes on your behalf. And we've actually provided a lot of technical assistance and grant writing assistance for staff with projects and things. And it's a good opportunity for you to be part of creating that vision for the watershed. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Councilor, are there any questions for Alyssa at this time? Or Alyssa, I'd throw the perennial question out there. Salmon recovery, not many salmon negotiate the 270-foot leap up above the falls. So what can you speak to specifically? Are there any salmon above the falls? And I know you touched on a few bullet points in terms of clean water, water temperature, and so forth. But are those? I assume that's because in the science shows there's a direct correlation between the health of the salmon downstream versus on quality of water or temperature upstream. Or
Yeah, and that's really a good point. The water all flows downstream past the falls, and what happens above the falls definitely affects the fish downstream of the falls. There's not anadromous salmon. There's some trout up here, but there's not the ones that go all the way out to sea and then come back. So we're not as eligible for those state funds above the falls, but I was just talking to Councilmember Shepherd about that today, how we want to try to lobby our state partners who provide the funding to start seeing how this is more connected and be more open to that. But the water quality, pollution comes downstream. The flows are super important. Having water in the stream in the summertime when the drought happens is really important for salmon recovery, as well as having not too flashy of peak flows. And so keeping that forest cover, keeping wetlands, encouraging beavers, all the forest area that we have up here that's used for recreation is just really a great resource for salmon. And so protecting that is a part of what we strive to continue doing.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Ross?
Who is our representative then on the watershed?
I'm the liaison.
Councilmember Shepherd is, she just was appointed as of January.
I had it prior to Peggy and
Councilmember Holloway?
Oh.
Yeah.
I had it prior to Peggy and Charles Peterson had it prior to me.
Councilmember Lissay?
This is a complicated question. I know you're probably not going to answer it right away, but if we're seeing numbers going in the wrong direction in terms of salmon recovery, and you've talked about a couple of strategies in there, you went through it quite quickly. What really are the things that are going to make a difference in terms of broad policy or more funding or more activities in addressing barriers to salmon? What's really going to make a difference to turn those numbers the other direction?
I think a number of things. I think our strategy relies on removing about 60 to 70% of the levees along the main stem Snoqualmie below the falls, so that the river has more room to move. It will then recruit trees, make the channel more complex. It will provide off-channel habitats where basically kind of making the house bigger for those baby fish after they come out of the gravel. It's the baby fish that are, or they call them juvenile salmonids, that are thought to be the bottleneck, where they don't have enough room to grow. And so that's one thing. Continuing to work on the water quality problem and getting trees planted along the streams. So we spend a lot of money and time planting trees to create shade, and those trees will also grow up and then fall in the river later, which is what we want for the complexity of habitat and the food web, sort of the basis of the food web. And then I think the other thing that we're starting to realize is addressing climate change is going to be a very big deal. Not only the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere it's starting to affect our oceans, but making sure that we're not draining too many wetlands upstream or cutting down too many trees, keeping those areas healthy. We're going to be losing our snowpack over time. Not have as much snowpack over probably in the next 100 years. Will be more rain dominated than snow dominated. So what we're doing now is identifying where is the cold water and what can we do to keep the water cold even when there's less snow coming down, and where are those areas that are very important to protect because they're already cold.
Thank you.
That's a piece of it.
Yeah. And I assume the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Program, or MPDS, will improve that in terms of runoff fertilizers and oils and other things into the creeks and streams. Is that not a big component of that?
Yes, it's a very big component of it. I think that will make a big difference.
Anything else, Council? All right. Melissa, thank you for taking your time out of your evening to come and fill us in on the good work that you folks are doing.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm always available for questions, so feel free to reach out if you have any.
And And Councilmember Shepherd, thank you for stepping up to learn more about what they're doing and assist in their efforts and bring that information back to us as well. Okay, with that, I'll move on to consent agenda. All items below will be enacted by one motion. Action items include minutes for the January 8, 2018 special and regular city council meetings. Approval of warrants as stated in the agenda packet. Other approvals include Agenda Bill 18020, Resolution 1432, approving the amended and restated interlocal agreement establishing e-City Gov Alliance. Agenda Bill 18022, Economic Development Partnership Agreement between the City of Snoqualmie and the Port of Seattle, and authorize the mayor to sign. Agenda Bill 18017, Resolution 1430, adopting the Snoqualmie Fire Department Strategic Plan 2017, and Agenda Bill 18018, Resolution 1431, adopting the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. Do I have a motion, Council?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion from the council members, I'll ask if there's any member of the public that would like to comment on any of these items prior to action. All right. Seeing no one move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Alyssa, we don't consider it rude if you wanted to go and enjoy your evening. You're certainly, yeah. Appreciate your, yeah. Okay, with that, there's no ordinances tonight. We'll move on to reports, and per the council's direction, we will take up the, moving down to under Finance Administration Committee's Agenda Bill 18025, Events Coordinator Position Description.
City of Snoqualmie seeks to add an events coordinator position. This management and professional full-time position will serve under direct supervision of the Administrative Services Director. Incumbent will determine the recreation and events needs of the community and implement plans and programs in response to those needs. This position will also act as a liaison for city-endorsed community events with various entities. In addition to this job, will have economic development responsibilities as described in the council staff report. Move to approve the events coordination position description. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18025 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any discussion, Council? Councilmember Shepherd, before we begin, I want to go ahead and kick it to Councilmember Holloway, because this came onto the agenda is rather late, so he gave an explanation of that, and also I'll provide an opportunity for the city administrator, and then I'll come back to you if you.
Okay. So, yeah, this is not moving per what we typically hope to do from now on, primarily in that the event season is starting. We've got some activities to start ramping up now so that we're prepared for the spring events and things coming up. Some of those activities are starting now. So we kind of short-circuited this, and it's really our decision tonight whether, we take action or not. We can move this to next council if we want to, or we can do action tonight given the urgency of setting those things up, but I at least wanted to bring it forward for discussion. Bob, you want to talk a little bit about the position?
Sure.
Or Bob, if you could too, or just add your reasons for perhaps wanting this to come forward a little more quickly, at least for discussion tonight or an introduction.
Certainly, I'll express some of those thoughts here within the job description that are pointing those out. There's several, I'll call significant changes from the previous contract you had for these services versus this position, and I'll just touch on a few of those. This person will provide support to Snoqualmie's tourism efforts, including obviously coordinating with key partners, assist with our Falls Greeter and the Puget Sound Museum programs that we currently have in place, and then assist in implementing the visitor information kiosk and visitor information websites. And we're also looking for a bit more solicitation and incorporating community and staff and for input on program improvements, new programs and events, obviously fundraising, writing grants, and developing innovative ways to increase revenue for the programs and events themselves. That was not part of the old contract. And then I also want to touch upon where it's being recommended for the position to be reporting to the Administrative Services Director. We believe there's a close relationship, working relationship with two positions or programs that currently are reporting to the Administrative Services Director, namely the Communications Coordinator, which is all of our communication efforts, as well as the City Clerk, who oversees the primary special events that come from other sources from the community. And we have to obviously make sure that those are closely monitored and coordinated with other events maybe going on in the community, coordinating for city staff time, so on and so forth. And we expect this person to also be closely involved in that endeavor as well.
Okay, Councilmember Shepherd.
So one thing that I'd like to look at is we have an old ordinance, number 580, that actually talks to the requiring confirmation by council for the appointment of certain officers and employees. And I think the current version of that ordinance is 2. I think it's 8.4 or 6.4. I can't remember. But anyway, they removed the ability to select an employee. But I'd like to bring that position into this ordinance in order to give the council a chance to give the okay for the appointment for that position. In addition to that, I'm not done.
Okay, well, I'm sorry?
You may not interrupt her.
Okay, sorry. I've been properly corrected, thank you.
So I do have the text for the proposed change to the amendment. But I also have a question about the position. How will it be advertised? I understand that sometimes we don't advertise positions for good reason, and I just like to have an understanding of how we would go out to advertise this position. I have more points. Salary. I looked at a couple of salaries, and I see that in North Bend, they have a similar named position, job title position, that is starts at about $4,000, and I see that the one in Issaquah, they both are kind of a job that has responsibilities in the job title for several things, not just one. So I'd like to see some of the background on how we decided to come up with the salary scale for the position and the job descriptions that that was based on. And then another point that I have is that can lodging tax revenues be used to pay for this position? Because based on the description, it sounds like there's quite a bit of activity related to tourism in this job title. So I don't know if possibly portion of this could be paid for by the lodging taxes. And based on that, I think that's what I have.
Okay. Bob, I don't know if you want to address any of the questions before we move on, or just, but I did want to make one statement that the issue on the including this position for requiring council confirmation, the ordinance is not relevant to the motion on the floor. So I just ask if you want to bring that up maybe under committee of the whole.
Okay.
And we can decide if we want to send that to one of the committees for discussion or consideration. Typically those confirmation are for higher level, director level positions, but again, we could discuss that separately. Bob? And then Sean, I'll come back to you, Councilmember Sonnell.
I think I captured all of your requests, Councilor Shepherd, but if I missed one, please let me know. Advertising for the candidates. It'll be a merit-based recruitment. We typically go out and advertise with, we wouldn't hire a recruiter, I'll put that up front. We wouldn't expect to have to do that. We typically use professional recruiters for higher level positions, department heads primarily. So we put this out to, we've got a couple different sites. One is, I think it's called GovJobs Today through eCity Gov Alliance. We would post this with the Association of Washington Cities, who also carries quite a few city jobs. We'd also promote it on some private websites. I'm not real familiar with the names of these, but there's quite a few that are out there. I can, for instance, describe what we've done for the finance director. I would think we're going to do something similar to that, but more regional, more local in scope. But we would expect to get it out there on a number of different platforms. Using Facebook. I think there's other software websites that I'm not familiar with their names, so we would expect to get it out to the entire region under different formats, obviously hoping the private sector looks at it as well than just public sector folks who might be interested. I believe the North Bend position, you'd asked about that, I believe that's part-time. This is being requested for a full-time position. I could confirm with North Bend, but I understood from those folks they were doing that that was going to be a part-time position. The salary scale, it was looked at very closely. It's actually put at management professional level 11, which is, I have to ask Deborah, but she did tell me last week where that would be the equivalent of, but it's on the lower part of our scale. And this is, the entry level is roughly, well, it's $55,693, which would put it at
Per month.
per month, which puts it in the range of our executive assistant as an example, and I believe our management analyst as well. But I'll double check that to confirm. Can lodging tax revenues be used for the position? I'd have to ask, defer that to the city attorney, but I would think it cannot necessarily, it could pay for some of that salary perhaps, but we'd have to confirm that based on what they'd actually be doing as a percentage of their total time. And then Mayor is ready, I think, to address your city council confirmation. This is typically not a position that would be under that guise.
Just as a point of order back there, Andy, I've been informed by one of the citizens that texted me that the audio is about 4 or 5 seconds ahead of the video. I don't know if there's something you can do to look at correcting that. All right, thank you.
Did I cover your inquiries?
I don't know how this works as far as procedure, but I have a kind of a, you have, okay, so I don't know how the procedure works, but I have kind of a follow-on question since you answered a question. Your answer made me, prompted me with another question. How does that work?
Well, so if I could, Councilmember Shepherd, if you could just hold on to that then, so I give
Okay.
the other council members an opportunity to speak, and then
All right.
I know Councilmember Sunwall's been waiting patiently. Councilmember Sunwall?
So I'm no longer on the CDC committee, but spent several weeks working on this before I moved to Parks. And I'm totally confused by this position description. The way I had left it and the way my understanding of how the Monday meeting went was that we clearly understood that an events, just events, so the 50, 60 events, movies in the park, coordinating with 4th of July, all that kind of stuff, clearly that was an urgent matter because that type of stuff takes planning months in advance. And I was wholeheartedly supportive of moving forward on that. I did not expect that to be a full-time position, and I certainly did not expect it to include the laundry list of things on here, merchant association stuff, fall stuff. In fact, we explicitly talked about how it would be highly unlikely that we would find somebody, particularly at that salary range, who had the expertise to be able to do all that stuff, and I don't even think they belong in the same department. So I'm not thrilled how this turned out, and I'm really not thrilled about at least the optics of how it came out, how the committee that this originated in finds out on Friday at 4 p.m. that there's been this sort of backdoor stuff that goes on in F&A, and all of a sudden, you know, Friday afternoon, we've got this position description. I've got 2 or 3 citizens calling me, Facebook lighting up, and it's just like, I don't understand how we got here. I thought we were past that.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Sunwall. Bob, did you want to speak into that at all or add anything or no?
I'll address the first points that Councilmember Sunwall made. We're of the opinion and belief that these all fit within this job description. We think they're very, very closely related in scope.
Or Bob, could you also speak to the issue of the council members feeling a little blindsided about, as Councilmember Sunwall described, sort of a back door, or somehow this slipped around and come Friday afternoon, or how the conversations went, or why this came forward now?
I brought it up to the Finance and Administration Committee on Wednesday night. I expressed to them the urgency that we've been looking at this for the better part of 3 months, and we needed to start moving on some issues. The ones that I mentioned in particular needed some addressing immediately, as well as the merchant groups. We needed to start rolling those again. And we do have quite a few events that are being put together for this year already, should be anyway. They're off our list from the previous. And we also know that there's special events coming from private sector that we're not prepared to handle at this moment if they were to start coming in. We'd have to grab somebody from staff and start assisting with that type of stuff. So it came up on Wednesday night. I got a call on Thursday. I understand the committee members were obviously discussing it, and they were going to be reaching out to other council members and letting them know that we're going to bring this back as an agenda bill. I think, if I understand, several of the council committees have been reviewing this since October.
Or as my understanding, at least the chair of the CDC would be informed that we were thinking of bringing this forward again, if for nothing else, just for a touch, for everybody to get their hands on it and see it and explore it. But whether that was done or not is not clear, I guess, to me.
I'm not clear on that either.
Okay. Councilmember Lasay?
I'm going to just go ahead and reiterate Councilmember Sunwall's concerns. I don't see where you're going to find a candidate can fill all these positions, or at least have all this information. I obviously am new to council, having been through 2 CDC committee meetings, one as a participant, one checking minutes. I did not see where this position was even discussed in the last 2 meetings. I have some concerns that it's coming through to council without, our self-proclaimed 3-touch rule. I understand it may have been looked at previously, but the job description is entirely new from what I had witnessed previously. I firmly and strongly believe that this should have gone back to CDC for review, should have gone through the process that we've established. And if there are urgent matters in terms of events and coordinating, I think it's fully upon the city administrator to assign it to a staff member before we have to get to the point of where we have to go through the process of authorizing a job description that seems very difficult to fill. I'll stop with that.
Councilmember Lasay, I'm not sure if I was following you saying assign work to a staff member whose duties are not to do.
If you need to coordinate events and you need to have things scheduled, and you need to do that, assign it to a staff member to take care of that. That's not a complicated task. If this position is, in the interim, yes, exactly. If this position is somewhat akin to an administrative assistant, it would seem that that would be appropriate to do. I don't see how that's how we have to go through this to get to that sort of activity.
Councilmember Holloway, then Councilmember Mayhew, and then James.
Address, well, yeah, I do want to address some of Sean's things. So I was approached. The decision to put this on the committee, on the council agenda tonight was mine. As I stated prior, because of the urgency.
You need to speak to me. No, you need to speak to me, not to the council.
Okay. Yeah. As I stated prior, it was so that we could have a view at this, understand the urgency, if we felt the urgency warranted to move forward with it or not. Okay, but I at least wanted to give us the option to review this. Lesson learned, let the rest of the council know, I will be very reluctant moving forward to jump agenda items again. That's going to slow us down. But, so if you want somebody to ask why this happened, you can ask me. And I will relinquish the floor to Mr. Mayhew.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, I would just comment, I have been and continue to be on the Community Development Committee where where we have been discussing what to do with the duties that were formerly filled by the consultant. I have a number of concerns about this job description, but rather than go into them now, I would like to make a motion to refer this matter back to the Community Development Committee for further consideration at its next meeting, and then have it brought back at our next council meeting with a recommendation from that committee.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to refer this back to committee, CDC committee, to be brought back at the next council meeting for consideration. At the next council meeting, Councilor May, was that your motion?
It was with
or at their discretion and timeline.
I was requesting it come back at our next council meeting with an understanding that if that needs to go through FNA, that the sequencing of committees would permit that.
Okay.
I still second that.
I'm sorry, did I give a second on that motion?
Yes, me.
All right.
Second.
Motion is second as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Okay, so if we could just discuss that motion. Councilmember Jeans, did you want to add to this one or just wait till we come back to the original motion?
Well, I had some general comments, but frankly, they'll do well to complement this motion. The contract that we had before, which was an independent contractor, aside from how that person performed in that contract, it seemed aggressive from the very beginning as a contract, because there were so many elements. In my view, the elements are events can and should be for the citizens of Snoqualmie. And economic development, I think, is an entirely separate skill set. It's important to us in a long-term way. And so the long-term way, it seems to me we can handle that in due course. And I hope that if this does go back to committee, we will go back to committee hearing from council members that events, there seems to be an urgency for events. And I think we should focus on a job description that handles an immediate concern, which is an events coordinator, and leave economic development to later discussions, perhaps with a different committee, but perhaps with CDC committee, it makes sense. But I'm supportive of this motion, and I think that the job that we had before was unfortunately doomed to failure because it was apples and oranges. And I'm afraid this events coordinator job description that we have now is also apples and oranges. And we need to take care of the immediate concern, which I think is events. And that's what I hope will be the focus of our discussion when we consider it again in committee.
Councilmember Roth?
I'm in concurrence with Bob. We had been talking about two potential positions. One was the events coordinator, and we thought that would be something simple. It's just going to be a city staff person that will do the events. And we have events coming up. 1,000 people attend movie nights, and there's like 400 people attend the band nights. And so this is something that needs to start planning right away. The other side of it was economic development that would help our merchants, that would do the greeter program, things like that. And that would take a little more planning, and I think we're going to send that back to the community development. So I was surprised to find out that this is now back to community development again, when we've already talked about and agreed to that the events coordinator would be a city staff person. And so through FNA, we decided we should have the job position and get it going so we could start planning.
So I was at the SCA networking dinner Wednesday night, so I wasn't privy to the conversation at FNA, and so I'm a little in the dark on just how this went forward in the last days of the week too. I do know it's been discussed at CDC. What I was a little confused about at the last CDC committee conversations was, at least from those members that have been discussing it for a few months, this movement toward, hey, we should segregate this into two maybe part-time positions, one focused on events, one focused on economic development. But it also logically fell from that the events component should go to the Parks and Public Works Committee, since Parks and Events comes under their purview, or the Parks and Events Commission comes under their purview, and that the economic development components remain under CDC. And I suggested that maybe refine that little conversation, but then go back to council, because council directed that it go to the CDC. And so as that is further refined, so I guess I would suggest if the council votes to send it back, that the efficacy of bringing it back for some conversation tonight, and the benefit of that would be to give a little more clarity or direction if there's a consensus on the council on at least which direction they're going. Because I will say this, Councilmember Lassay, I will not be directing any of my staff that are already spread very thin to somehow allocate more of their time away from other important city endeavors and work to do work because we simply haven't gotten around to getting this position filled. And having a staff person or someone available in a consultant or staffing position to do that. This is precisely why several months ago I stated that I felt, knowing how long these things take to figure out how to retool it and redefine it, that I recommended we extend the contract at least 3 or 4 months into the new year to give the council time to redefine how this position would be structured as an FTE while still keeping the momentum going for planning for events. We chose not to go that direction. I saw Councilmember Mayhew's hand was up, and then I'll come to you, Councilmember Small.
Yeah. So having attended both the Community Development Committee Community Development Committee meeting and the Finance and Admin Committee, I would point out to my fellow council members that there were conversations in those different committees which were inconsistent with each other, including questions of staff, the answers of which were thought to be different in one committee than they were in the other committee. And so this is exactly why, one of the reasons why I think that this is not yet ready for consideration by the council. It hasn't been fully, I don't know if vetted is the right word, but fully discussed and understood by council members at committee. And I would say that in previous community development committee meetings, the staff was asked to proceed with a concept of just this coordinator position that the other council member mentioned. And as you point out, Mayor, several months ago, this was raised by you, and yet we didn't see a job description until, I want to say, late Friday. So I just think that the urgency is I think well understood, and that is why in my motion I asked that a recommendation come back at our next council meeting. That's in recognition of the urgency of this, but I believe that going back to council is very important to get this right.
Yeah, and my dilemma as mayor of the administration, Councilmember Mayhew, is that I can't take direction from 3 council members in the committee. I need to bring that back for the full council to confirm that direction before we allocate resources to then define a job description and come back for approvals. Otherwise, the rest of the council says, wait a minute, this is not what we sent to you guys. And so, again, that is the benefit of bringing it back tonight, to sort of raise some of the warts and wrinkles in this and ask that there be more, at least the majority of the council giving more clarity about what direction, not only to send it back perhaps, but to give more clarity about where is the consensus on the council and how to move on this at this point. So I'm going to come back to Councilmember Shepherd and then Holloway and then Sunwell.
Okay, so as far as postponing, I think we need to really come up with all of our concerns before we send it back to committee so that they know what we're concerned about. And one of the concerns I have is that I did do a salary survey lookup from Indeed.com for an events coordinator for the city of Seattle, and our salary range was higher than what they're paying the city of Seattle. But what I'd also like to see is the job descriptions of what other cities are doing and what we pulled together in doing our study and deciding what we would do as a city, because it does seem like an odd juxtaposition of responsibilities. And given some of the expertise that I'm getting from some of our residents, it sounds like it might not be a match made in heaven as far as job duties, especially after we've already tried to do this on a contractor level, which is generally easier to bring talent forward than it is to do it as a FTE, where somebody has to be committed to staying in our city for an extended period of time. I think it would be even tougher to bring those skill sets together. So, or maybe we could, have somebody start out at a part-time level and maybe there'd be an evolutionary process where they could become that could be like a career path. I don't know. But I would like to see more information about what research the city has done before they brought this to us. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Was it Councilmember Holloway? And then Sunwell.
So, well, not sure we're going to solve it tonight, so I would like to call the question on the motion on the floor.
Second.
All right.
Is that something you second?
I don't think you have to. Okay, I'm sorry, you do, yes. Otherwise, it dies for lack of a second.
Well, you can tell me to go away.
So there's been a motion and a second to call the question. If there's no objection, we'll stop the debate at this time. I see no objections, so with that, we'll vote on the motion.
Can you restate? Restate the motion.
Councilmember Mayhew, could you be so generous as to restate for me, please?
The motion was to refer this matter to the Community Development Committee for further consideration at its next meeting, and to come back at our next council meeting with a recommendation.
Okay. Motion is second as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Any further? Well, no, there's no further discussion. Is there any member of the public? Anna? Anna, you came in a little late. There's a new light system there. You have 2 minutes. It's going to go green when you start, yellow at 30 seconds, and then red. No. It'll be all for you. It's right next to you, right there. Yes, please. You can hold it and pick it up, yeah. It's a lot of pressure, I know.
Singing.
When the light goes red, there's a shock in the microphone, so.
You let her find that out for herself.
Right, so I don't have to turn it on or anything? And it's going to go green, then your time starts.
But-
You're good, yeah. Name for the record, please.
Anna Sotelo, 7713 Center Boulevard Southeast. I'm just very confused because I've been attending those community committee meetings, and the way I heard you recap it, Mayor, was that these new committee members were going to do their homework to catch up so that they could all be on the same page. The next committee meeting, they were going to come up with something to be presented. You recap that. I'm confused why that does not get to this committee, that message did not get clear. I'm confused why I couldn't see that on the agenda for that F&A. I didn't think I needed to go to an F&A to watch about this position. That was not there on the original agenda. That's my confusion. There's some clear miscommunication, and if you guys are talking about going to committees only, I've been waiting for weeks to be able to get some kind of input. We've had one merchant meeting that was a complete flop, disaster. And if you guys are giving us one shot only, you're asking a lot, because you've asked us to give you guys one shot over and over and over and over and over for all these oddity events. And in the name of, we're just getting organized, we have outgrown. No, 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 no. And it's insult to injury that here we are wasting council time when oh, you're kidding me. When it was down to still on the whole committee board. It's just ridiculous. And the fact you were very gracious to put that on a motion quickly. And I don't appreciate that everyone wanted to talk after that and explain why. No, let that committee do their job. Two things have been consistent. 2 part-time jobs. That's the only thing I've heard consistent. The other one is that we want to get it right this time. That's why we want your involvement. I have a financial stake in this. Anyone want to pass me their 2 minutes? I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Anna.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a request for information? Should members of the public be commenting on the motion to refer to committee or the underlying motion regarding the events coordinator?
I thought her comments were relevant to both, frankly. Were
Just asking what they should focus their comments on, if there is any focus they should have.
So the points are fine. The points were fine.
Yeah. The points were fine, but I think he was asking, even aside from the points, kind of a,
fine.
yeah, okay. Right. Catherine?
So should I be speaking to the motion? No, you don't have to state your name.
If you're speaking to both, Catherine, you're fine.
Okay.
One or the other.
Catherine Potchwitz, 7951 Maple Avenue, or, yeah.
We're all getting used to the new protocols.
Right. Well, thank you to the council for bringing that motion and supporting that. I do want to lead my comment to the meeting that we had as merchants together, and the conflict that I have with seeing the description that was written, because it was my understanding after reviewing my notes, after this was brought to my attention, that it was going to be 2 separate positions. It seemed like Mayor Larson, you felt that was the correct course of action. And then Sean, I know you weren't there, but I think they did a good job reflecting your feelings, to the merchants on that position. And I would challenge Bob Larson to maybe speak more with them about what our needs were, kind of, and see that reflected in the position, because they were 2 separate entities. And I do want to say that I do support the events, and I do understand that they need to get going. I think that they should drop the economic development portion from the position in its current state. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you're still on green. Anybody else like to speak to this? Kelly? Ms. Scott? Yeah.
Kelly Spratt. I've never done this before, so I apologize if I don't have proper protocol. Ann, let me know. Kelly Spratt, 47336 Southeast 162nd Street in North Bend. And I just have a question about, I guess I'm just kind of confused, and maybe y'all can set me straight as far as you guys have come up with a pay scale for an event planner position in which you're kind of backing into this. The tail's wagging the dog a little bit, it seems like, because if you don't have job responsibilities outlined, how can you identify what this pay scale is to pay this individual? And that goes along with every single person within City Hall. There's a lot of overlap, it seems like, and I don't know, you know, it's on the agenda soon where you guys are going to be evaluating what pay scales are for everybody in the department. And you're saying that people don't have time, Matt, to do these responsibilities of a part-time job for an event planner. Well, how do you know that if there's that much overlap and if identified responsibilities are not outlined for every job? So it seems like a challenge, and it also does seem like it's doublespeak where there is economic responsibility that you're involved in. As far as the Snoqualmie Chamber goes, you're the contact, and all of that information is brought back to the Chamber of Commerce and an economic development plan put in action at that time where you guys focus on revenue for merchants. Additionally, please don't interrupt. Additionally, please don't.
I didn't.
Also, you also have to think about, you know, you freed up cash flow for this event planner position in the first place a couple years ago, and it took 2 years and a contract renewal, and you still don't have job performance standards in place for the event planner role to begin with. That's never been done, and I don't know how you guys can even pay somebody if they don't even have job responsibilities complete. So
Right,
I'm
Ms.
glad
Spratt,
you guys are going back
Ms.
to
Spratt,
the
thank you.
beginning.
If you could conclude your comments.
Of course, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak to this item? All right. I just do want to clarify, I don't have anything to do with representing the chamber or have any role with any sort of economic development issues there, but, all right, council, all those in favor of sending this back as stated by Councilmember Mayhew?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I guess I'm pausing because we sort of lost an opportunity to give a little more direction to that committee. I don't have any more clarity going back, and I guess all I would say is I just reflected I came from, at least once a year, I'm invited to speak to a class of third graders, and I do sort of a Lord of the Flies scenario where they end up on a deserted island with no adults, and they have to figure out how to organize themselves and survive, and I prep them with kind of things on how a city runs, and they often conclude, or this morning they concluded and said, gosh, we did really bad, didn't we? And I said, well, no, actually you didn't. It's very hard for adults to come to the consensus, and so when you have like 14 or 15 people, and I say 7 council members and a lot of stakeholders out there trying to come to consensus on this, it's not easy stuff to do. No one's doing a bad job, and I hope I don't sound like I'm casting dispersions on anybody in that process, but this is difficult work on an issue that, again, doesn't have, you know, this isn't like fire and police and typical core city services, but it's their activities, I think they're valuable for this particular community, especially given how many children and young families in this community, given that 35% of our population is 18 years younger. These are things that are highly valued. So I just wanted to comment on that before we move on. You're saying point of order?
No, just wondering if it's appropriate for me to make a brief comment?
Go ahead.
Not if it's about me.
I'm sorry, I'm messing up here, aren't I? Not if it's about, let's save it for community of the whole. Could you do that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, my system's now logged me out. Give me a second to get back in. Okay. Since we're on the Finance Administration Committee, is there any other items for
No further report.
All right. Moving back up on the agenda, then Parks and Public Works Committee, Agenda Bill 18023, Community Development Block Grant Agreement for Koinonia Park Improvement.
The Community Development Block Grant Agreement between King County Housing and Community Development and the City of Snoqualmie provides $75,000 for improvements to Koinonia Park. Although the grant does not require a program match, the city has budgeted $222,950 of city funds to this project for a total project cost of $297,950. Staff anticipate bidding this project in March through April 2018. Move to approve the Community Development Block Grant Agreement for Koinonia Park improvements.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18023 as stated by Councilmember Sundwall. Any discussion, Council?
So I was going to invite, are you going to come up and, yeah, I think we have a little story to share here. It's a lot of money to spend, but I think there's a good story to share here. So.
This is staff. Nicole, if you could introduce who you are.
Sure thing. I'm Nicole Sanders, a senior planner with the Community Development Department. I tend to work a lot on grants, applications, and reporting for the city. We went after a grant for this park in, I believe, 2013, and although we had it for 2014, 2015, it was only $25,000 at that time. We did not have sufficient budget to continue work on that project, so we had to give the money back, reapply, and now we have $75,000 for the park. As many of you may or may not know, this is located centrally in a Habitat for Humanity neighborhood with roughly 50 homes. CDBG funds can only go to neighborhoods that have an affordable housing need. The park, when it was initially developed, had a series of wooden vertical structures with handles on it for children to climb on. Compared to other parks equipment in the city, it is subpar. So in addition, there is a sloped feature in the park which does not drain, leaving a slope that is very muddy and slippery wherein children are present, and it's been recently raining. So this money will be used to basically provide a natural retaining wall feature with a slide. It will improve the drainage. Our hope is to put in spray foam so that it meets ADA, American Disability Act accessibility requirements, and drastically improve the subpar play equipment that's there. So that is the project summary. We're very excited to be working on this project. We've coordinated with the neighborhood with some community meetings. We've had emails over the years about this park and wanting improvements, so we're very happy to be able to bring that to the community at last. So I can answer questions on it.
Councilmember Shepherd?
I was trying to read some of this stuff about this park, and I guess the developer, or not the developer, the designer, Bruce Dees and Associates, they talk about working with the community as far as having a public involvement process. Are we going to have meetings, public meetings with the neighborhood to talk about the design?
We've already had at least one, I believe two. We had one in August 2017, we were in contact with a member of the Koinonia Ridge HOA Association. Her name is Yulia Zardov, I believe is her name. So she was emailing with us back and forth on how the grant was coming and the project, and she was providing updates to the community members. So when we brought on Bruce Dees as a designer, they met with residents in October 2017 or August 2017 to gain input on the design. So, and I believe they've had one additional meeting since then. I didn't coordinate that one, so I'm not as clear on it. But I know I think there was like 10 to 15 households represented out of 50 households. Yeah, with children present. So, yeah.
Great. That's it for me.
Any other questions, comments, council? All right, Nicole, thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? All right, seeing no one move forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Move on to Agenda Bill 18024, Interagency Agreement Number K4380, Amendment 1 between the State of Washington Department of Enterprise Services and the City of Snoqualmie for the City Hall Solar Expansion Project.
For the City Hall Solar Expansion Project, AB 17-010 approved a Department of Enterprise Services interagency to provide management services. If approved, this agenda bill would bring the total solar expansion project cost to $181,300 or add $130,800 to existing approved expenditures by approving DES IAA Amendment 1 and approving construction and measurement verification funding. The Department of Commerce grant will cover $120,000 of the project costs. Total city project funds would be $61,300, of which $28,000 is budgeted. An additional $33,300 would be sourced from the Environmental Sustainability Fund and REIT. Move to approve interagency agreement number K 4380 Amendment 1 between the State of Washington Department of Enterprise Services and the City of Snoqualmie, City Hall Solar Expansion Project, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 18024 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. Is there any discussion or questions, council? And again, did you want?
Do you want to come up and tell that story too?
Yeah, or actually, Sean, I should have clarified. Ask me.
Yes.
I was being scolded to say that you should be ask me if you want a staff member to sum up rather than council member. But
Mayor,
I
can
know
we
you
have
had
one of your
questions.
staff come up and explain that?
Yes, thank you. That's a great idea. Nicole, if you could come. I know you had some questions the committee she was going to come back with additional information on. So, Nicole, if you could, please.
So as I said, I do a lot of grants work with the city. This has been an ongoing one. We've had past conversations and summaries before, I believe last year, but our council composition was a little different then. So just to sum up again, we went after Department of Commerce funding for solar expansion of the current roughly 10 kilowatt project on our roof. We were going to apply for another 10 kilowatts, and after we began the grant, they told us we had to apply for a minimum of 20. So it has a roughly 50%, 20 kilowatts additional. So it has a roughly 50% match requirement towards which we can allocate the original money spent on the first system, 40,000 of which was paid for by PSE, 20,000 of which we paid for. So we are hoping to pay a total of 60,000 for the subsequent 20 kilowatt addition for a total of roughly 31 kilowatts on top of City Hall. It will offset roughly 18 to 22% roughly of City Hall energy consumption. If you took out the server room, which provides services for citywide computing, that percentage goes up to roughly 25 to 28% of the annual energy usage. The total 31 kilowatt project is projected to have a 20 to 24 year payback period for the total city funds invested. The solar panels are commonly issued with a 25 to 30 year warranty, so payback will occur before the warranty is expired. And then on top of that, panels tend to last roughly 40 to 50 years, so you'll be receiving a net income on the project after that point.
And Nicole, we had a conversation earlier about this. The servers, your calculation was are roughly about 25% of the power load in this building, correct?
Roughly, yeah. But
so at least the panels would be taking care of the energy requirement of the server room.
Right.
And I guess we were a little surprised we dug into the numbers that it wasn't a little higher than that. But I'm not sure if we got right to the core of the numbers. But Councilmember Lassay?
On that question, I'm just wondering what kind of, is that a significant dollar amount then, I would assume? I mean, if we're saving close to, I'm going to use a round number, 25, just as it's so a quarter of the power, I got to assume that's a pretty significant amount of power, and the payback,
right.
Although you've listed it as 20 to 24 years, it probably could be less than that.
It depends. I mean, our 9.5 kilowatt system, I think, produced roughly 11,000 kilowatts last year. So we've been seeing a lot of good sun. But over the course of 20 years, it's really hard to make accurate predictions that are defensible. The other side of that is the payback is contributed to through roughly $15,000 of production incentive credits through the state. So when you start to dig into the weeds, it's hard to summarize these in a way that is succinct and clear. But I think the written summary is the best way of summarizing it. We probably spend $16,000 annually on energy for City Hall by itself. But that can vary depending on the year and how cold it is, honestly.
Well,
and for those that might, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the advantage of a green building, a sustainable building. They, I believe we go LEED Platinum on this building, didn't we?
Built to LEED Silver.
LEED Silver, okay.
Right.
Didn't actually get paid for the certification, but we built it to that level. Yeah.
Hey, that's my business, I
We
understand that.
saved
completely.
ourselves $150,000.
So, I mean, there's savings in there, there's energy efficiency that's already built into the building, so it's, the additional solar panel is only improving upon that.
Absolutely.
Right. Councilmember Jeans?
Nicole, couple of years ago, we were going to very aggressively put panels on our roof of this building. Mm-hmm. And there was an infrastructure problem. Our roof couldn't handle the weight for that?
That was on the.
That was, yeah, the YMCA building was not built for loads to sustain both the solar panels and the snow.
Yeah.
So we had to move it to City
Councilmember
Hall.
Jeans may recall the first panels put up there were actually paid largely out of a PSC grant because PSC had what they called the Green Power Challenge. And we competed against 5 other communities for that grant. By participating, we get $20,000. If we won the challenge, the city that increased the voluntary enrollment of residents into paying a little extra on their power bill every month, the city that was most successful in increasing that voluntary number was the one that won the award. We won that challenge, and we got a $40,000 grant to pay for the installation. That was supposed to be on the community center. That's the way we advertised it. But then when we had to execute, we found that when they did the engineering, the roof wasn't engineered strong enough to hold the load, which is kind of a shock to me and perhaps to Councilmember Lassay, being an architect, that you wouldn't have that kind of a threshold to carry the weight of a solar panel.
Structural engineers.
Right, so we ended up putting it down in City Hall.
I was a little scared realizing that I'd walked on that roof afterwards, but
Yeah.
I'm alive, so.
We now know you weigh less than a solar panel.
Positive takeaways.
So any other questions, council, on this item? All right. Nicole, thank you. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Ms. Lowney.
Monica Lowney, P.O. Box 493. So I simply just wanted to point out a couple of things to think about to add in the number crunch. And one would be, I do not know the age of the roof on this building, but when it does need replacing, has the cost been estimated for removing the panels to actually put a new roof on? Has that been added in the positive or negative numbers that we're looking at? And also, I wanted to mention that I just read an article today that PSC by 2025, I believe, will be 75% green energy. So I know that this is grant money, and just because it's grant money doesn't mean it's good money if it's costing the city money. So I just was hoping that that could be taken into consideration, the actual re-roofing of this building eventually and what that cost will be. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lowney. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on this item? Yes, Kim?
I need to restate my address since it's in the record.
Just your name, I think, would be
Okay, Kim
sufficient.
Loop. Just 2 questions. Will the panels be sourced domestically or will they be imported? And also, I just read today that President Trump has signed an initiative to initiate a 20% tariff on imported solar panels. So I don't know if that affects your numbers at all, but
Yeah.
something to be aware of. That'll probably take a while. I'm sure people will fight it. But just thoughts about where the panels are sourced through a political lens.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. And given that you're well within your 2 minutes, I'm going to take some of your 2 minutes to answer your question, and that is, and Nicole, you confirm whether it's wrong or not. By virtue of using the grants, the requirement is to use a domestic product, and they basically, the grant helps pay for that. Is that correct, essentially? Sorry, if you're going to have to come to the microphone of you. Yeah. Which was done in the first phase as well.
Right. I don't know if we are required to by the grant. We will use domestic product because there is a state incentive, the production incentive,
Oh, the production credit, yeah.
associated with use of domestic panels and inverters. So the out-of-country tariff will not affect our project because we will be using domestic product.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Oh,
Sorry,
well,
and sorry for indulging answering the question, but I suspect it's a question the council members might have asked anyway, so. All right. And is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing no one else move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Any other report for Parks and Public Works Committee?
No, that's it.
All right, moving on to Community Development Committee, Agenda Bill 18021, Northwest Hydraulic Consultants Task Order 35, Snoqualmie River Floodway Assessment dated October 16, 2017, an amount not to exceed $18,075.
The scope of work proposes technical support services to the city of Snoqualmie for evaluating the impacts of the Puget Sound Energy constructed weir at Snoqualmie Falls and whether submitting a FEMA letter and map revision, LOMR, for modified Snoqualmie River conditions is warranted. Move to approve the Northwest Hydraulic Consultants Task Order 35, Snoqualmie River Floodway Assessment dated October 16, 2017, in the amount not to exceed $18,075.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 180201 as stated by Councilmember Jeans. Before I kick it to discussion, Council, I'm going to invite Mark Hoffman to come forward and speak to some information I know that was requested at the committee meeting that I hopefully will make Councilmember Mayhew quite happy.
Thank you. Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director, City of Snoqualmie. This item, task order number 35 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, specific to a possible city effort to do a letter of map revision, LOMR. It went to CD Committee on January 2nd, again on January 16th, and then discussed at FNA last Wednesday, the 17th. And most of the materials, you understand, some of the questions coming out of those meetings included what would the benefit be. At that time, we relied on two exhibits in the July 31st, 2017 memo from NHC that showed the current base flood elevation and floodplain that we are using for all determinations and construction, but also a modeled exhibit that shows large portions of property that would no longer be in the floodplain, excuse me. This effort, task order number 35, would do three things to prepare for a city council decision to pursue lengthy and expensive letter of map revision. The first thing it would do would be correct the numbers at the falls, the CFS going over in a 100-year event. It's approximately 2,500 CFS larger in the modeling than it used to be. So that needs to be corrected, then the modeling would ensue. The second thing is these two exhibits map the floodplain, not the floodway. So to get at the question of what would the potential floodway benefits be, we would need task 2 of this task order. The third is a pre-application conference directly with FEMA to better judge the cost, whether it's a large bin, small bin, how long would it take, so that when we come back for, at first, a projected number, an estimated number in the 2019 budget, that it's relatively accurate, and then you could then use that whenever we ask for the formal go-ahead to do a letter of map revision. So to get to what is the benefit? What happens if we use the new base flood elevations that would reflect the current physical conditions out there as a result of the second project at the weir? We contacted Angela Donaldson last Friday. Today she was able to send us some data, which is pretty dramatic. And she's also in the King County Flood Control District, so she's very knowledgeable. There are 908 total structures downtown in the floodplain. 847 are residences. 491 of those are NFIP active flood policies, houses paying for expensive flood insurance. If we go forward with this LOMR, and it's predicted to demonstrate a benefit based on modeling of 0.8 feet, FEMA rounds off to the nearest foot. It's estimated to result in a savings of 33% on those policies for residences, 26% for businesses. So taking that there are 491 residences taking advantage of the subsidized NFIP insurance, a 33% reduction would be $558, based on an average annual of $1,692. I don't know how many cents. So the resulting annual average payment or policy would be $1,134. So just taking that one segment of those taking advantage of the subsidized NFIP insurance, that's $250,000 annually each year. This task order is asking for $18,000. So you can see the immediate payback, and thanks for.
But we don't know how many of those houses may be affected by the LOMR change. Sorry.
No, and we were pressed for.
Point of clarification.
Point of order. Yeah.
We were pressed for a community development director estimate, which is hard to do because we don't have an overlay of property lines over the modeling. So what I chose to do is compare this expenditure with a possibility. If 10 homes are taken out of the floodplain as a result of this, it pays for this $18,000. The exact estimate is $273,978 annually. If 10 homes come out of the floodplain and they are NFIP subsidized, that's $16,920 for 10 properties.
A savings for the personal properties, not for the city, but the savings is for
Or,
residents.
yes, for those paying for flood insurance. The other category is private unsubsidized, which is about twice the policy expenditure.
Councilmember Mayhew?
Your 10 houses, that's in 1 year.
That's in 1 year.
And yet
every year.
those savings would be into the future.
Exactly.
Not 1 year, into
That's
perpetuity.
correct. Yeah. And you could pick an endpoint, 10 years, 20 years. The only thing you're running up against is climate change. So it's hard to say it's in perpetuity or 50 years because conditions change.
Councilmember Sunwell?
Yeah, as someone in the business, this flood insurance is out of control. And it's going up at about 25% every year, and it's worse for businesses. So to me, this is an absolute no-brainer. I know there are going to be additional costs beyond the $18,000 actually. And if you, when I'm done, if you could maybe remind us how much to see this to the very end, how much it might ultimately cost us. But virtually any amount of money, I look at it from two perspectives. There's a perspective of how much can we save residents for on their insurance on an annual basis. And then the second thing is one of the challenges that anybody who owns a business, or sorry, a home down here that is not raised is not just the cost of flood insurance, it's the saleability of their home. And that's a significant, my parents were looking at a home down here, and I told them what the flood insurance was going to be, and they're done looking at a home down here. And so it's an opportunity to I think, revive a little bit the market down here, particularly for those homes that are not raised. So I'm in full support of this. And can you remind us roughly what to see this all the way across the finish line, what that's going to cost us beyond the $18,000?
In task 3 of this task order, we would sit with FEMA. We would talk about the advantages of doing a conditional LOMR or a CLMR, in which case an interpretation is made very early in the process. But that interpretation is, does it involve 1, 2, or 3 panels similar to the 2004 effort? That's approximately 9 months, relatively cheap, and they could give us a pretty forthright number. If it's a large bin, it involves 4 to 6 panels and extends into a neighboring jurisdiction, North Bend. That's measured in a time length of years. The estimate that we had a year ago was upwards of $80,000, and that is for the initial technical analysis. FEMA pays for a lot of the other processing and the mapping and the revision, but they've also admitted they don't have money for that. So when we get to that stage, if it's large bin, many years, and they need to be fully funded. So that's the fear, but we have another checkpoint in before we request that money, and that is to update the council on which of those is likely. If we go with a conditional LOMR, it's less risk, and we know very early in the process. What we're trying to prevent is to go forward, spend that money, and not realize the benefit that's shown in the modeling. A major part of this is whether FEMA agrees with us or not. The advantage is NHC did the last LOMR, has done all of the studies and modeling that this area is based on. So it's relatively accurate.
All right. Councilmember Jeans?
So if I'm a homeowner and I live in this area under the old map, I can save money. If I'm a homeowner and I want to modify my property, or if I'm considering buying vacant property, I'm wondering whether there are greater opportunities for me to get permits to modify, to expand, and permits to build. Would it have a positive impact on that?
Yes, it would, and that's what we focused on CD committee, and that's why this information is an even better story. This is this $250,000, which I love to say, is a lot of money. But that would be a near immediate effect on paying a policy. But then each decision for a building permit would be based on the new base flood elevation data and not the existing map. The new number would reflect the existing flood conditions out there at a greater savings, and every decision you make about how high I need to elevate my home, whether I need to elevate it, whether the crawl space is adequate, whether I can afford to leave the crawl space existing because my premium just went down, each and every one of those decisions would be better off with this new number of a foot lower. When task order for floodway is done, we will be able to show a similar situation for the floodway and not just the floodplain. The benefit that we could identify tonight is if you're taking out of the floodway, it means the difference between being able to do anything or not. So that's the floodway benefit.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So just to be clear, this would not, this is mostly a statement, but you can confirm this. This does not remove the requirement for people to have flood insurance here in Lower Snoqualmie. What it does is it dramatically, up to about a third, reduces the cost of it because we're not going to be changing our flood zone, which is AE. This is simply lowering the base flood elevation, which brings more homes above the flood line. So mortgage companies are still going to require them to have flood insurance, but it will be significantly cheaper.
That's correct, and I'm looking for the exact words. It's federally insured mortgages. You must have it.
Yep. And Mark, you threw a lot of numbers around. Just to summarize, you said for the average home in the affected areas, $1,100 a year savings and about $250,000 citywide annually, correct?
For the subsidized 491 NFIP insured.
Those homes, the 491.
For the 491, their savings is $558 on average, which results in just that category, the $250,000. The other category is private insurance, which I'm estimating the annual is twice as much. It's unsubsidized. There would be an unidentified benefit there that's above and beyond the $250,000.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Let's say.
I just wanted to understand exactly, we've thrown some numbers around, I think I may have gotten lost. So $18,000, if we only spend $18,000, will we be guaranteed somebody saves some money as far as insurance?
No, nobody will save any money unless we are successful and actually reduce the base flood elevation and the modeling in a LOMR.
I mean, if we spend the money and we get approval, then we can save money without spending more money.
That's correct.
Okay.
The last component is the actual processing of the LOMR with FEMA, which is either.
And I guess the council member was asking if there's any additional costs for that next step to actually execute it. Are there additional costs beyond the 18,000?
Yes, and that's that.
Right, that's what I wanted to
Task
clarify.
order 34, and the reason we have budgeted line item for this task was that the range was from 20 to 80,000. We went with a mid-range based on a discussion. That's in the 2018 budget, but we don't need it for what was then known as Task 4 through 7, and that's the actual processing. So when we come back for the 2019 budget, and then in 2019 probably, and ask for the green light showing the benefits to actually do a LOMR, we will have that number for you. And my hope is that it's in the 20, 30, 35,000 range, small bin, 3-4 panels.
So at a minimum, we're spending 40 to 80,000 to get to the point where these benefits trigger. Would that be accurate?
In addition to this, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was on the same path as my question, so I'm going to slightly change it too. One of the things I find interesting, and I'll defer to the experts in the room and in the industry, that the average flood building coverage limit is listed as 222,000. Given our current housing situation, that's a very small number. Am I reading correctly that if that's the coverage limit, that because of the structure being in the floodway, that coverage limit would go away because of you're no longer carrying the same level of flood insurance, or am I just missing something there?
I would read it as anything beyond that, which is pretty much everything. There's not many homes at $220,000. the homeowner would be on the hook. It's
Right, what
uninsured.
I'm getting at is that by removing these homes from the designation of requiring the insurance that is directly related to flood insurance, I understand there still has to be some level of coverage. That's a significant also increase in coverage by the families that are in those homes, that they would be covered above that amount as well?
I don't think the caps would go up at all.
Okay.
The policies would be cheaper, which then in turn means that that money can go into other things. For commercial, it directly relates to improvements, revitalization of downtown. For homes, it can go directly into building materials, better quality structures, and so forth. But I think the federal coverage limits are probably not going to change.
Councilmember Sunwall.
So just to answer your question in a little bit more detail, so you would likely not see the coverage limits change because the level that you'd want to protect your house is still the same. NFIP does not require you to insure your house to 100% of what it would actually cost to rebuild. I think the thinking around that is rarely does a flood carry your house down the river, so the whole thing is a total loss. Oh, I'm so stuck to you. This is exciting. That's where it would differ significantly between a traditional homeowner's policy and a flood insurance policy. Is it's very common to see people not carry the full rebuild costs of their home on their flood policy. So I don't know that you would see, I would not personally recommend someone change their coverage level, but the rate that's assigned to that coverage level would decrease on a per thousand basis. And so that's why, because you're not moving anybody out of a flood zone. You're still going to be in AE flood zone. So
there are 12 severe repetitive loss structures in the floodway that will probably remain in the floodway. And I would say those are of the character that could be total losses. Whereas everything else, the average claim, once you get past that initial coverage and then your contents coverage limit, your furniture, et cetera, there is a number here for the average claim in Snoqualmie, and that's $20,665. So the average claim is that. It's rarely 100% of your home.
I'll ask the City Attorney, Bob Sturbank, to add a point.
Just to chime in, those coverage limits are usually referring to the cost for replacement of the structure. And
Correct.
so when people are thinking, $500,000 to buy a house in Snoqualmie, that's the dirt and the structure. And so your coverage limits on structure only are usually considerably less than what you paid to buy your house, even at 100% replacement.
Okay. Are there no more questions or discussion? Councilmember Mayhew.
Just would make the observation, at least my observation is that it seems that we rarely have a chance as a city to make such a difference and have such an enormous payback to the citizens from an investment we make as a city. I think this is very exciting.
Great, thank you. Right. Any other discussions or comments, questions, Council? All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Is there any other report for Community Development Committee?
No, Mr. Mayor.
I believe I already asked if there was a report for Finance Administration Committee.
No additional report.
Public Safety Committee, any report?
I have one. So the public safety meetings are going to be changed to the first and third Mondays at 4 p.m. at the fire station.
All right, is that all? All right, thank you. Any items we have 2 items under the committee of the whole. I'll kick those both to Bob Larson, our city administrator, an update on the ethics hearing officer process and an update on the controls consulting project. And then I'll open it for any other items that council members want to discuss.
Mayor, if I also could add, there was a request of an update on the search for the finance director position. I'd be happy to.
Sure, that'd be fine if you want to add that, Bob.
And if I could defer the ethics hearing officer to our city attorney, he's more involved with that directly than I am. Just an update on where we're at.
Sure, just a brief update. As council may recall from the last time we talked about this, the code provides that the ethics hearings officer is to make a determination of legal sufficiency and probable cause 30 days after a receipt of the complaint. And after chatting with the ethics hearings officer and scrutinizing the code a little bit more, we both concluded that that's talking about 30 days after the ethics hearing officer receives the complaint. He received it on I believe it was the 20th of December, and the 30 days would have run on just this past Saturday. My understanding is that when he makes that determination, that was either to be sent by the end of today or first thing tomorrow morning, he will be communicating that to the complainant and to the subject of the complaint. And if the determination is made that both those exist, then he'll be proceeding as provided under the code to schedule a hearing. And then that's all the information I have at this time.
All right, thank you, Bob. Bob?
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a clarification. So just to use kind of like courtroom type speak. So is this essentially the judge is weighing to see if it's going to go to trial, so to speak, versus thrown into court?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holloway and then Mayhew.
So you said the complainant would be informed, and so would be the subject matter of the...
Subject of the complaint,
Will
correct.
the city also be informed?
And I believe that he will copy me on his determination, and I can keep the council apprised.
I just want to know.
All right, I assume Councilor...
And I have my email up, and I haven't received anything so far.
All right, Bob?
Mayor and Council, the Operational Consulting Services Agreement with Clark Newber, we're putting the finishing touches on the scope of services, meaning we're obviously working out the details exactly of what Clark Newber expects of us, because we had some refinement from that. Right after the council meeting, we had a couple, I believe Councilmember Mayhew sat in with us, as well as Mayor Larson, but the scope is going to remain the same, and just the timing of those elements, and that's ready to go. I think we just put the finishing touches on it today, I believe, and the work should begin, I'm believing, this week, with that actual Clark Newber starting their asking questions, getting staff lined up, so on and so forth. And then also on the finance director position, today, January 22nd, marks the, I'll call the soft closing of the call for resumes and for qualifications. It's obviously open until filled, and now the consultant will continue to accept applications after today, but today's the first look. And he sent me a letter. He had copied Deborah Vigil on it. And he wants to report out that we have right now 23, he calls them 23 qualified candidates. That's based on a screening questionnaire, and that's what he put in his letter. And there's, of that number, roughly 14 are from Washington State, and the others then are from around the, I'll call it the region, going as far east as Wisconsin and as far south, as southeast as Florida and Texas. So we've got quite a few applicants outside the region as well. He is going to be screening those in the next several days. He'll be actually meeting with me on Thursday to give me an update, but he's looking for some submittals from these candidates, a comprehensive questionnaire and an online recorded interview that's going to assist us in selecting, after he gets through with the initial 6 to 8 of the qualified candidates, he's going to hopefully help us get it down to perhaps 4 to 6 of those candidates to invite for the personal interviews. Right now, we're scheduling those, or planning on scheduling those for early March. It's probably the first full week in March, and I'll obviously keep mayor and council aware of what those dates will be, as well as staff. And he said, just based on a quick scan of the field he's got so far, he's very confident that we're going to have some outstanding choices amongst these candidates. So that's good news. I'll entertain any questions anybody might have.
Councilmember Somo?
Just refresh my memory, how long do we have Mr. Orton on contract? And because I know he has a limitation on how long he's actually able to work with us, I believe.
His hours actually started over, if you will, under the PERS rules, the Washington Public Employee Retirement System as of January 1st. So he can work with us, assuming he wants to continue with us, well through the appointment of the candidate and then bringing that person on board. I anticipate that'll be roughly around sometime after April 2nd. I'm hoping we'll have the candidate on board. I know Rob and I have spoken. We're constantly talking about those dates, and obviously we want to make sure we get this search done as quickly as possible, as thoroughly as possible, but also get Rob on his way to another retirement. So, but
we're trying to treat Rob respectfully this time, so he sticks around. So.
That's right. All right.
Rob wants to know, Mayor, when that's going to actually start. Oh, could I just ask, excuse me, it'll come up later, committee of the whole. You gotta
Well, go ahead,
understand.
Bob.
I wanted to, for this.
We're at committee of the whole, so.
For the events coordinator, I heard several council members that were leaning towards obviously wanting to ask other questions, or I would suggest, if I could respectfully, to ask them to submit any questions you may have for the committee of the whole, and then we'll get, obviously submit them through Jody, and then we'll get those obviously distributed to the council members as well as the public who might be interested in hearing more about that. It might help facilitate this a bit easier, if you will, and more efficiently.
Or we could add as a discussion item underneath some of the other committees, if that, each committee wants to spend some time at least identifying or adding perspective to give the direction to the CDC committee to take it further. I mean, there was, given the conversation that took place tonight.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hall?
Well, there probably should be, I'll call it a side channel conversation in Parks and Public Works for the events portion of this, but the path should be economic development, F&A, back to here.
Yeah, I guess my only concern was if they're carving it into the two positions, then there's definitely a piece that concerns the Parks and Public Works Committee. And at least that they would be pulled into that conversation if that's the direction they chose to go. Councilmember Mayhew?
So I was going to make a similar request that all council members direct concerns they have regarding this position. That'd be fantastic if it's through the city clerk, but what we need is to make sure that they get to the Community Development Committee members so that we're aware of all of the concerns and that we can address those in the committee deliberations and in the recommendation that we make back to the council. So we need to be aware of all of those concerns. So if you could make sure and get those perhaps to the Councilmember Jeans, who's the chair, perhaps through Jody Warren, that would be fantastic.
Yes, and for further clarification, once Jody receives those, she'll redistribute them to, obviously, to the committee, but she'll just redistribute those to the entire council, so have a compilation.
Okay, it's just going to make it a little more complex, so, because now that's fine. The committee members, I guess, will also send our comments so that there's a complete set.
I think that would be the best way to do it. That way, council members, they all see the questions that are being submitted by each of the council. So we can distribute it to obviously the Community Development Committee as well as the Parks and Planning and then the Finance and Administration Committee as well. We've done that in the past and it seems to work the best. That way we're not concerned about if somebody's questions got to the right place and got redistributed.
Okay, Councilmember Lassay?
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't mean to imply earlier that staff wasn't fully tasked and had availability and were not full to utilize. I didn't want to imply that. What I was trying to get at was if we do have events or we do have things that are of urgency and are of necessity, I'm certain that you'll take action as necessary, and I trust that you'll take care of those, that we don't miss out on something as a city for the purposes of assigning this job responsibilities to a single person.
And I guess my concern, Councilmember Lassay, was the resources of the staff, if anything, have been taxed considerably of late. In the last several months, we've had a dramatic increase in public records requests and activity that's consuming a tremendous amount of staff time. So if anything, our staff resources tending to the normal workload has been spread thinner. And on top of that now with the, what I think is a high value for everyone, this controls audit that's essentially coming in is going to put additional tax on that time. So I'm trying to be realistic about conveying to the council that I need to defend those resources. Otherwise, I'm going to be making some sacrifices on some core city functions. And we just need to be realistic about what, and if it means some events have to drop off this year, that's perhaps what it's going to mean. You know, everybody's been sort of a victim also of an unusual alignment in timing and sequence that we've had this tremendous shift and change in council and some of the decision makers at the same time we're trying to shift all this around. And again, it's no one's fault, no dispersions to be cast there, but it's just kind of the product of the circumstances that it's difficult to be trying to rush this forward, and yet some things are requiring some attention very soon.
Well, I trust you'll handle it as well as you have in the past. So,
all right, thank you,
Mayor. If I could just further clarify your comments, not to
go ahead, please.
Just add to them. We are doing our best to make certain that we're salvaging, if you will, and that's I think it's a proper word, those most popular events. So movies in the parks, music in the parks. Those are our mainstays. We're going to obviously get those contracts in place. We'll do everything we can. But Mayor's correct. There may be some other things that we may not be able to pull off this year if we don't start getting those at least planned for fairly soon. I'm talking about the next 90 days here, but that's what it's going to require for us to get moving for the summer events.
Councilmember Mayhew and Councilmember Jeans, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Jeans, I know he has had a hand up earlier.
Perhaps this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Those on the Community Development Committee, 3 of us, Matt, Jim, and I, we are interested in all of your, I'm addressing Matt, I'm interested in all of your thoughts about the position. But remember, it's not a two-way conversation. If we get it two-way, then we're having an unscheduled council meeting. So we want to avoid that. And I will proceed with a lot of leeway on how the 3 of the committee members, including myself, will view this. And the idea is not that if this discussion and refinement starts in the community development, you may find that the recommendation comes out of the Community Development Committee with a recommendation for a position that would more naturally be reporting to Parks and Public Works. So give us your thoughts. We welcome them, and we will report back to the next council meeting.
Councilmember Mayhew and then Shepherd.
So I was just reflecting a little further on how we're going to collect these comments from council members. And we have various members of the council and the Community Development Committee have reached out to various members of the community and merchant organizations to try and get their input as well. But I wonder if the city clerk is collecting these concerns. I wonder if it would be appropriate to ask if there are members of the public wish to also forward those to her, that if she would be willing to also compile those, with the understanding that that needs to be done in a manner that she can very easily do that. So they need to be bullet points, not extensively written, something that she can easily compile for the committee to consider.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. That would be fine. Councilmember, I'm sorry, Peggy, you were next, were you not?
I have, I want
I'll go
to
to someone.
revisit the ordinance that I'd like to amend.
Okay, let's conclude this topic, then we'll go right
Okay.
to that, yeah.
So I guess one of the things I would recommend, it's easy for me to say because I'm not on the committee anymore, but to me, it's still crystal clear that these are 2 very different positions. There's an events person, and then there's an economic development, merchant, waterfall person. And my hope would be, and I suspect this will happen, my hope would be that we would, more than just bullet points over email, not suggesting that's what you were saying, but maybe there might be an opportunity to sit down once or twice more with merchants, separate them out, put them together, I don't know. But maybe a second shot at making a meeting like that work, because my understanding is it didn't really go very well, and it's just lots of reasons why. But it seems like that having their expertise and their opinion on what, I mean, it is their economic development that we're seeking. So it would make sense that we would reach out to them again and do that. So that would just be my, sorry, Mayor, I was looking at reflection off the glass. I was actually talking to you. So that would be my thought there.
Well, thank you. All right, any other item, comments on that item before we shift? No. All right, Councilmember Shepherd?
So
Another item for committee of the whole?
Yes. I don't know the process for this, but I would like to make a motion to make an amendment to an ordinance. And the SMC number 2.64.010, and I have a red line version of it, and I would like to add this position or positions to the list, and I would like to restructure the language not to be exclusively for, I guess, officers, but for officers and certain employees, basically, and to add whatever this job title may end up being, I think that this has been such a contentious and really important position to the city that I think that it's reasonable for us to have a chance to have confirmation from the city council for any appointment for either the events coordinator slash economic development person, or the two positions. But I think these positions seem to really strike an important chord for our community, and I think that it would be great if we could add this to positions that the city council would have to sign off on.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ann McLaughlin to speak to, you respectfully asked for kind of the proper procedure. I'll ask Ann to speak to that. Yeah.
So if I may, it is customary that items that come up of this nature during the committee of the whole are then given to a committee to be prepared. It is not customary to simply make a motion to amend an ordinance on the fly, and it doesn't correspond with the procedures the city has established. So I would guess that the clerk is making note of your concerns, that you will give her a written formula of what you'd like to be considered, and then it will go to the appropriate committee.
Okay, thank you.
And I would recommend that would go to the F&A committee. It could be discussed there, because the F&A usually is the one that looks at ordinances and job descriptions and that sort of thing. Councilmember Holloway?
Well, would this fall in under our retreat agenda on council procedures? Could this be a discussion item within that later this week?
You mean the item that she discussed, or the procedure? The procedure is pretty well spelled out currently. I mean, Ann did review all of our council procedures prior to tonight.
Well, I'm not questioning the reading of the procedure. I'm questioning the motion to change the procedure. Could that consideration be part of our council retreat for the council procedure?
Okay, that's an entirely different item. So a motion to change the, I don't think Councilmember Shepard was speaking about a motion to change the procedures.
She's suggesting a change to an ordinance.
Or change
And in the
an
normal way, that goes to a committee to be considered. It doesn't seem to the parliamentarian that that would be retreat
Yeah,
material.
understand this thing. Yeah, okay. So you're good?
I'll withdraw.
All right. Councilman Hussain?
Could it be requested that the council member repeats the code number if you have it? If not, I'm curious as where that is.
2.64.010, which is the 2.64.010, and that's the section of the code that itemizes the officer positions of the city that are for which council confirmation is required, because the statute provides that mayoral appointments do not require council confirmation except in those instances where confirmation has been required by city charter, which we don't have, or by the council by ordinance, which would be this code section.
Thank you for that.
And typically it's been director level positions, not assistant directors or managers or those below. And so this would be unique in that regard.
Right, all of the itemized positions in that section are department heads.
Councilmember Shepard, I will come back to you, but I got a couple more that want to speak, and kind of doing the round robin rules. I'll come to them first. Councilmember Mayhew, and then Councilmember Ross, and then back to Shepard.
Mayor, I thought I'd just inform you and the city attorney and the rest of the council that I've heard in the last 10 minutes by email from the complainant in the ethics matter that as of 10 minutes ago, the complainant has not heard back from the ethics hearing examiner yet.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ross?
You're talking about amending the ordinance, but don't all job descriptions come through F&A? And so we get a chance to review every single position. We don't necessarily determine who's going to be hired, but yet we do review the position, and if you're adding additional position to the city staff, that we have to approve that, correct?
Job descriptions, yes, are approved by a council, for especially new ones or ones that are amended. I think the question here is that the appointment process for that position. Would it have to, the question is, should it, or could it come through council after the mayor makes the appointment for confirmation?
And frankly, it does feel a little premature to me, because I don't know what job I'm putting in that ordinance yet, and so maybe it bears defining the job first before considering that. But again, typically it's at a director level. Otherwise, the council could find itself confirming every, line work, all the way down to the line workers. Come back to Councilmember Shepard, and then back to you, Councilmember Holloway.
I just wanted to refer back to ordinance number 580. It's an older ordinance where the language actually does include both officers and certain employees. So that's where I got the idea for the language, and also looked at MRSC, and they also say that there is an exception whenever you don't have a job description that's been fully accepted yet, that there's a window of opportunity for council to ask for the ability to have the right to confirm the individual that's going to be appointed into a certain position.
Council certainly has the authority to add every position in the city if they'd like to the ordinance. But Councilmember Holloway?
So I'd like to recognize the council members' bioretention capabilities and ask that we return to the agenda. This has been referred to committee.
Okay. I was going to ask for some concurrence from any other members. We're just by a nod of heads or agreement. If they were agreeable to take up this item, at least in F&A, if everybody's agreeable, F&A would take up this item and we're discussing. Okay, so thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. You have some agreement on that. So I think we've concluded that topic. Any other topics for committee of the whole that the council wishes to discuss? All right. With that, are there any other announcements tonight?
You've got citizen comments.
Yeah, I'll get to that. And this is the second meeting of the month, and so there's no written staff reports. However, at this time, are there any other comments for or from the staff? Quick comments or questions for or from the staff?
Mayor, just a reminder, I'm sure Jody sent it out, but the Snoqualmie Valley Government Association meeting is next Wednesday, January 31st, and it's being hosted by Carnation, and we usually have good attendance, and I would highly encourage council to attend if they can.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it that night, so please, some of you do attend, at least have a presence there. Councilmember Summerall, do you want to have something?
Can I ask Mark Hoffman for an update? Are we at that?
You can, yes. Or you can ask me to ask Mark Hoffman for an update. Yeah. What's the protocol?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
you have to ask me.
Can you ask one of your staff named Mark Hoffman to give us an update?
Okay, thank you.
May I
Councilmember
address
Summerall.
Mr. Hoffman with one F?
Yeah, Councilmember Hoffman, can you give an update? And he's going to ask me in a moment what he wants an update
What
on.
subject we talking?
So I would like an update on the affordable housing appeals and process and where that is right now, because we got to be close to getting that.
What Councilmember Sunwall said.
Thank you. Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director, City of Snoqualmie. The update is that tonight at 4:30 or so, we got a draft asking for, please, can you review this for non-substantive typo type things, get it back because the hearing examiner is going to release a decision tomorrow. So we will be reviewing that decision and then updating City Council and parties of interest.
Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements or questions from staff? All right, with that, are there any citizens who would like to wish to comment before concluding tonight's meeting? Luke.
Hi, Luke Murziak. I'm at 7632 Heather Avenue, Southeast. At the last council meeting, Mr. Mayor, it was discussed that a mudslide had the potential to put at risk the city's primary water supply, and I just ask an update on the ongoing and planned actions to mitigate that risk.
All right, thank you, Luke. Kim?
In listening to the discussion about the hiring or the definition of the job descriptions, I heard a request for input and also heard a commitment to provide input, but I didn't hear by when. So to me, I drive a lot of meetings to drive action cycles, so they produce outcomes, and I don't know if that's part of the process in this forum or where that would happen afterwards, but it also sounds like that's probably where some of the spin began originally, is that it just wasn't that clarity of executing through all the steps, and where we are now as part of that.
Thank you, Kim. I'll conclude public comment, and then we'll respond to some of those questions. Any other, Ms. Lowney?
I would like to ask the city and council to give citizens an update on the Shoreline Master Plan. I know that Mark Hoffman in the past said sometime early next year, this was last year, that a new draft would be coming out, and I believe we're going to be into February soon, so I would like an update. I would also like to see an update or hear about an update regarding the environmental impact study for the mill site expansion, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lowney. Anna?
Anna Sotelo. I would also like to have an update regarding, for example, what was on the report last council meeting regarding Save Our Snoqualmie. It's something that I've been wanting to have a chance of 2 minutes to speak about because as Councilmember Mayhew said, it is a wonderful website. It's a wonderful program, well worth $4,000 of grant money. But the problem is, if it's not being done correctly, it's worth nothing to us as merchants. And my concerns as far as regarding who's in charge at the city to give them the proper information of businesses that are existing, that are open, that haven't closed up. And why would the best of competitions being start on the 2nd of January with the closing of the 13th? Even if we did have a liaison who was giving this information to the Save Our Snoqualmie group, it's hard to think that in 2 days they would have had that information. And it's sad for me to see that our city doesn't have just a list of every single business in the city limits. Not asking for everyone's email, just every single business listed. And that who's double checking to make sure. So again, a wonderful product and a wonderful website, but if it's not being utilized properly to help us, the merchants, then it's not. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anna. Anybody else like to comment before we conclude tonight's meeting? All right, so real quick, I'll just say to a couple of those comments, Luke, or Kim, thank you that the council members that kind of know the timeline that drives it is the cycle of the next committee meeting, which tends to be the week between the council meetings, so every other week. In this case, however, there's a 5th Monday month, so there's no committee meetings next week, so this would fall into the first week of February. And for the public's purposes, yes, that's important to let the public know that get your comments in by committees. The meeting on the first 3 days of the first week of February. On the Canyon Springs issue.
February 5th. Point of order.
Oh, February 5th for CDC. Okay, thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
What was the question on Canyon Springs that we could give an update on? Luke, you were.
The question was status of the city's efforts and remediation.
Yeah. I mean, just simply, Luke. I mean, it was as we reported in the paper this week. We basically hired the consultants to go out there and really evaluate the depth and nature and suggest to try and measure precisely how serious it is, and then give us some suggestions how to move forward with engineering for remedies to that. And so it's basically an evaluation stage right now. I had a number of hands up here with council members. Sorry, Peggy, yours wasn't one of the first hands. I guess they all went down. Peggy?
Can we get an ETA on when we might know something about Canyon Springs?
Did Dan out of the room, or all those guys left? I know they were out in the lobby for a bit. I'm sorry, Peggy, we'll try to follow up with you on that. Councilmember Sunwell?
Maybe you can address, lest there be tremendous fear. Obviously something we need to fix. But can you, or I guess Dan's not here, my understanding is that even if that thing broke tomorrow, we have enough water, particularly in the next 6 months, through our other sources, that people would be able to drink, flush, and shower. Late August, early September might be a challenge, but is that the case?
Yeah, that's correct,
Okay.
yeah. We have 3 wells at the north well field and 1 well at the south well field near the high school. That's a fairly poor quality water, but at the south well field, but if we have to bring it online, we bring it online. Anyone else have a hand up before I go back to Councilmember Mayhew?
I just note that the Community Development Committee meeting is currently scheduled for the 5th of February at 6 p.m. The public may want to get their comments in and may want to the extent they want to attend that meeting. I think it's possible that the committee chairman or the mayor pro tem may move the timing of that. I don't know, but they may want to continue to monitor that if that's important to them.
Yeah, it'd be best to get in a few days before so you guys have a chance to digest or read through that material. Councilmember Shepherd.
So I had a request in to actually walk the area, and I haven't gotten a response back. Do you have any idea about when that might happen?
If I had any of my public works staff come back in the room, I could answer that question for you. Yeah. I've made a note, Patty. We'll discuss the staff meeting first thing in the morning and get an answer back to you quickly. All right. Any other items before we conclude? Or were there any other citizens that wanted to comment before we conclude? I think we wrapped that up, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. With that, We almost hit a milestone of concluding by 9 o'clock, or at least the regular meeting, but at this time, we're going to go into an executive session. Meeting is recessed for an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, Section 1II regarding litigation. Bob Sturbank and Bob Larson requested to remain. The executive session is expected to last approximately 15 minutes, and there may be action following. The rest of you can enjoy your evening, or you can hang around and come back after if you'd like. But you have to do it out in the hallway. As my grandpa used to say, you don't have to leave, but you can't stay here.
Signals to me, and I don't know what that
It's okay. You don't have to.